Hello and welcome to the Sports Lounge. I'm Travis Kriens. We have Drew Amman in the black, Charlie Hildebrand in the yellow, Marcus Traxler in the blue for the colored impaired, what do you call it?
Colorblind.
Colorblind.
Or the South Dakota State black men's basketball jerseys.
Yeah. And you can't see
all three of them.
You can't see with the cameras, but
this is brown.
Nice
this is
striping thing going on. It's very comfortable. It's
20%. 20% cashmere, yes.
What's that red dot?
You would notice, wouldn't you? On today's show, we'll look back at the college football weekend, but first we'll show you a video of some of our upset picks, and we'll react to those next.
I'll give two games to look out for. One on Saturday, one on a different day. On Saturday, one kind of flying under the radar. Baylor and TCU. TCU only has 8 starters back. Baylor has Robert Griffin. I think they have a chance to put up some points on the younger TCU defense. Could be an entertaining game. We'll see how it goes.
Any takers on Northern Iowa, Iowa State?
Well, let me just say that I'm not touching that UNLV game with the 10-point something.
No, I wouldn't bet on it.
35-point favorites.
I'm not watching it.
Wisconsin.
Whatever happens, whatever happens.
I'll tune in.
Northern Iowa and
Iowa State.
Iowa State.
Is that tomorrow? Is that Thursday?
It's this weekend.
Okay. Look
for
that. Look for that. I think there's usually three FCS FBS matchups a year where it goes down to the wire, where an FBS team is just like, what's going on?
I will touch your UNI Iowa State.
You will.
UNI beats Iowa State. Iowa State beats Iowa. South Dakota State beats UNI. South Dakota State, the state champs of Iowa in football.
Done and done.
Assuming we can find a way to play Drake here or there somewhere, but
That's true.
Well, that's a win over Illinois on the road.
You say
a win.
false.
Yes, I say true.
Oh, true.
I say true that they're going to win conference games. I think they're going to go 7-5 this year. What do you think of that? Okay, and I think I think they have it. Well, maybe 6-6, but they're going to make a bowl game. I think they've got a decent chance of winning Saturday against USC. What do you think of that? What do you think of that on the road?
Okay. Why?
Okay.
How about why?
Well, I think
USC on the road.
I think you're wrong, but you're entitled to your opinion, and I will fight so you can have that
I'm
opinion.
not saying they are going to win, but I think when they lose 55-13, then you can come back and say, well, Marcus, you were wrong.
What about 40-10?
Fine.
Okay.
You can come back and say it.
It's on the record. We have it on tape.
And as you saw there, the biggest one was USC and Minnesota. Even though Minnesota did end up losing 19-17, we laughed at Marcus, we made fun of him, but it was a game. And we doubted you, and you were right.
I think I said it was going to be a game, and I said Minnesota was going to win, and I was
Came
half
close.
right. I was half right because it was a game, and Minnesota lost. So, I mean, but a pretty interesting ball game, and certainly a good start for Minnesota, even though no moral victories, but they do get the victory, they do lose.
They beat the spread.
They beat the spread. So
They showed that they can play on the road with the top 25 team and have it go down to the wire.
They did.
What's good for them? I seem to recall bringing this up earlier that maybe USC, that program is a little weird. Matt Barkley.
Yep.
When's this kid gonna pan out and really become a superstar? Hasn't happened yet.
When's Lane Kiffin going to pan out and become a superstar?
Both valid questions.
Very valid questions. USC has some holes, it looks like, still. Not the program that it was when Pete Carroll was there.
No. And then Charlie had I tempted anybody to take Northern Iowa over Iowa State, and you were the one that stepped up. They ended up losing with 38 seconds left on a touchdown, but they lost 20-19. But you get the kudos for going out there.
The kudos, like Marcus kudos for being close to being right, but not quite. Well, Iowa State struggled at times in the past. You and I beat Iowa State a few years ago. I thought it might happen again. But, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. And Minnesota against USC.
There you go. Yes, close.
Well, I'm not
Too surprised.
when Charlie made that pick, it was completely logical to me. I think I said Northern Iowa's a really good team, probably a top 5 team.
Of all the picks we laid out last week, that probably was the most realistic. Even though we had South Florida, Notre Dame, and Baylor, TCU out there too.
Yep.
I mean, honestly surprised.
And obviously
Northern Iowa
more
lost that
impressive, Baylor TCU. You look back at the tape, you said Baylor could put up some points on that TCU defense very young.
I didn't think they'd put up 50.
50's a lot of points.
Well, even the broken clock's right 2 times a day. You throw enough stuff against the wall, you're about to get something right sooner or later.
You went for that FCS upset, 2 FCS upsets, Sacramento State over Oregon State, 29-28 in overtime. Then you had Richmond over Duke by 2, 23-21. Does that say more about the teams that won or the teams that lost?
It says a lot about Duke, I know that.
But we know Richmond's a good FCS program, and Sacramento State, I don't know, 1 point better than Oregon State, I guess, on that particular day. Oregon State's going to be down in the Pac-12 this year, but like you said, we know Duke's not very good.
Yeah, I don't think Oregon State's great. They were about 500 last year, or a game below 500, and I think they'll be about that again this year. But it's still Sacramento State beating, a
At
500,
home. At home.
a 500 FBS team, or an FBS team from the BCS conference. I think that does. I was more surprised with that one, obviously, than with Duke losing.
It seems like there's a couple every year. Last year, the big one again was James Madison.
And Jacksonville.
And Jacksonville
Over Ole Miss.
beat Ole Miss.
Masoli. Amazing.
That's right.
And historically, the biggest one is Appalachian State, Michigan. But there's games like these every year, and if this is it for the year, it's usually 2 or 3. Maybe there's one in the books this upcoming week. I don't really know the matchups that well besides SDSU and Illinois, but it's possible.
It didn't get much better for the Pac-12 because, we mentioned the USC game. They ended up winning, but only by 2. You had Oregon lose by 13 to LSU. Hawaii doubled up Colorado. You had Houston beat UCLA 38-34. Washington barely beat
lost.
Eastern Washington 30-27. What does it say about the Pac-12? Because you mentioned last week, things are never as good as they seem and never as bad as they seem.
You're right, and that's exactly the point I'm going to emphasize today is that,
Again,
yes, the way top of the Pac-12, the way top of the SEC is very good. They're better than 98% of the teams, 99% of the teams out there. But for this middle tier, these lower tier teams, they're all bunched together. I mean, it's all the same cluster where, Colorado's capable of losing just about anybody. And, these other mid-range teams in those power conferences can lose to anybody in any given week. So, I mean, there's holes in all these teams besides the top 5s, the Oregons, the Alabamas, the LSUs.
I would agree with that, like I did last week. But just to play devil's advocate, I think you could make a case that USC, no more Pete Carroll, they're starting to feel a little bit of the scholarship reductions from the penalties, the recruiting violations. USC is not the top dog in the conference anymore. Oregon, offensively, is very talented, but still runs, and I know Chip Kelly would hate to hear people say this, but let's be honest, it's kind of a gimmicky offense. Now, if you've got the right athletes, you can really narrow that and make it work better, but there's still a little bit of gimmicky to it. And they ran into a tough defense and lost. And I think you could make a case that the Pac-12 might only be, like the 4th best conference in college football right now.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon losing by 13 to LSU probably doesn't hurt their chances as being the number 1 team in that conference. And when you take into effect everybody else in that conference, no real stellar performances in week 1. And I think the Pac-12, it's going to be a feeling out process, but I think it will still be clear that Oregon's the best team in that conference, even after losing to LSU in a tough environment.
Yeah, and let's remember that too. I mean, it's not like they're playing some team that is just awful. I mean, they're playing a great defense, loaded with athletes across the board still, that basically was playing a home game.
Yeah, Oregon doesn't start the year playing, Bob's College. You know what I'm saying?
the truck driver school.
They're playing the Boise States on the road. They're playing LSU at a neutral site, so to speak. These are teams that are challenging first week, and then maybe that is a good part of why Oregon maybe starts slow typically, is because they got a tough game out of the gate, and a lot of these teams, these SEC teams, these other power conferences will play the Bob's colleges of the world, the Akrons of the world.
Is it necessary to drop them 10 spots in the poll, though? They lose to the 4th-ranked team in the country, essentially on the road by 2 touchdowns?
The polls are always goofy with stuff like that. I think the bottom line is by the end of the season, if they keep winning, it'll balance itself out for the most part. But I would agree that 10 seems a little low, because I think you could make, not that it's right, but you could make a case that Oregon maybe really isn't any worse than LSU. They just kind of had some unlucky turnovers on special teams, and that changed the tide.
It doesn't seem fair, but when you take into account that the 10 teams that passed them or whatever, they all won. So they're 1-0, Oregon's 0-1, regardless of the fact that Oregon played a pretty good opponent in week 1. And like Charlie said, if Oregon's good enough, it'll balance itself out at the end of the year anyway. And Oregon, not really eliminated from the national championship, at least looking at it right now.
It's purely based on the adage of a win's a win, a loss is a loss. Now, I wouldn't have dropped Oregon more than 3-4 spots, not 10. I think you have to look at other things besides the win-loss. You have to look at who they played, where they played. Oregon didn't look bad. Again, like Charlie alluded to, they had turnovers, and that's crucial, and that's what's going to lose you ball games. But I just don't think you can punish a team so much just for one loss against a really good opponent. It's too much emphasis on purely winning, purely losing.
And I think maybe that slide can be attributed to not having much to look at. You know, like at the end of the season, if Oregon is 9-2 and they lose a game, you'll say, well, they still beat X at home, Y on the road. You know, that type of lineup. Whereas, you know, they put out a top 25 every week, and you know, if Oregon loses, they gotta bump them down.
And we can bring this into a different argument where. Why have the polls? It's a scheme to sort of garner attention to teams.
It's like a media relations type thing.
It is.
Or public relations.
That might
Absolutely.
be the one thing the BCS has right, is not releasing the rankings
Until-
until middle of October.
Yeah,
That's a
week
very
6.
valid point.
I mean, I just don't see how can you label the top 25 teams when, I mean, there's so many factors. There's kids who get hurt. There's kids who all of a sudden become ineligible. There's just a variety of things. I mean, then, oh, well, this team's not as good as we thought they were. It becomes a complete loss as to where these teams actually are. Now, you can say, well, Oklahoma's the best team in the country right now, but I mean, no team has stepped on the field, you know, except for 1 week. That's a whole other topic in itself, is the fact that the poll process is a little trivial up until, you know, when you get into the swing of conference.
Go ahead.
And the coaches, how can they honestly rank the teams? You know, 1 week at a time.
Now you have a GA do it.
Yeah, looking at the film of the one team, I mean, they can't honestly pick who the top 25 teams are.
I think the biggest problem with starting it early is it just becomes a beauty contest, but it seems like for the most part, voters hate dropping teams in the top 2 or 3 unless they actually lose. So then you could see things where, you know, Oklahoma, and I think LSU is number 1 in the AP poll now. I don't remember which one's which, but either way, let's just say they're 1 and 2. Is that unless they lose, nobody's going to want to drop them, so they could play 6 games in a row against teams that aren't going to go to a bowl game and really struggle and only win by 3. And someone, you know, I don't know, like say Ohio State would just go out and throttle everybody. You know, teams ranked in the top 10, and they're not going to want to drop them then because they already started that high. You know, like you were alluding to earlier, I think that's a good point about the BCS, is that if they would wait a little while and maybe release them the first week of October or something and get a little bit more background and source material to look at first.
For as much stock as schools put into coaches finishing in the top 10 or the top 5 at the end of the year, I think schools put a lot of stock into being in the preseason top 10 and preseason top 5 too. I don't think coaches get pay incentives for that, but I think you know, athletic departments, boosters are looking at that saying, why aren't we in the top 10? We're supposed to be so great. And I think there's a ton of pressure, as we know, on, you know, where you're at in the polls even before the season starts.
They'll never say it. They say, oh, I don't care, top 10, whatever. I want to finish at the end of the year.
Right.
But honestly, I think, you know, they do care, I think.
Yeah, I think, and another thing, I think taking away the numbers for 4, 5, 6 weeks, I think it adds a great degree of suspense, if you ask me. Instead, now we sort of subconsciously think, well, you know, Oklahoma probably is a little bit better than Alabama. What are you basing that on? You're basing it on the number. You know, Oklahoma's 1, Alabama's 4, whatever they are. So I think if you take that down, then you truly have to look and just be like, well, I don't know who's an underdog. We'll see what happens. I think that's more surprising. That'd be a more surprising, more exciting aspect of it to me as a fan than if I look at a game before it starts and, oh, this is the 3rd ranked team, this is the 13th ranked team.
And even if they wouldn't do that, let's say you take away the polls, you're going to have an ESPN or somebody come along and have their own little power rankings like they do for the BCS now. They have BCS rankings 2-3 weeks before they release them now, projecting, and they're pretty much right on. So it seems like whoever can get the story first and rank the teams.
Well, it's clear that the algorithm of the BCS has been leaked out, and they need to add more
For now, until they tweak it
coefficients
again.
and complexities to it.
And then the colors on your jerseys, which Maryland would have, bar none. The blacks, the reds, the yellows, the whites.
A whole other topic in
Someone who
itself.
threw up their Fruity Pebbles all over.
I didn't think they were as bad as people thought, but
I think
I've seen, there's been worse.
I think just the helmets like that would have been pretty cool.
Yeah, but then they added on with the shoulder pads. But
I also proposed, what if they would have done the black and yellow checkers all the way through their uniform, pants, jerseys.
Go all the way
helmets?
down, straight down.
crazy.
You wouldn't have been able to tell their numbers apart at all, but it would have been awesome.
I thought Maryland's uniforms looked better than Boise State looked like a bunch of stormtroopers out there. It's ridiculous.
Enough with Boise State. We get it that you don't like them.
Quickly, mention FCS, FBS. Utah State competes with Auburn, probably should have won the game, if not for an onside kick. And that goes along with the point, maybe the best game all weekend, except for Baylor TCU. How much do we want to put stock in Baylor this early on? One game.
Well, Utah State's going to beat Boise State. Anyway, go on.
Whoa.
I think that you could put a fair amount
You
of stock
hope
into
so.
Baylor. Baylor went to a bowl game last year. They lost to a pretty solid, not a great, but a solid Illinois team that had, 3 guys go in the first 2 rounds of the draft or something like that. Robert Griffin's back, very good quarterback, very fast. They run a high tempo, quick offense that works perfect to his strengths. And he'd been a good thrower in the past, but looked exceptional against TCU, just dropping it in there. I mean, I don't think they're going to go 10-2, but I think they could be 8-4 or 9-3 at the end of the regular season.
Yeah, 8-4, 9-3 would be pretty good for not having a defense. Because Baylor.
I play in the Big 12.
Well, that's true, but yeah, I don't see them finishing higher than 3rd in the conference. And that would be a pretty good season for Baylor.
Oh, yeah.
What? Yeah, and this brings to another point where I think Baylor is getting out of that sort of purgatory of that tag of Baylor Bear football and what a joke. I think it's getting away from that, and I think again that bowl appearance for them helped them out, but it's starting to change a little bit. And keep in mind, Baylor's a Texas school; they can get recruits if they have a recruiting pitch good enough. They can get talent, and they have talent. It's just a matter of can they compete in what will soon be defunct Big 12, I guess. But we'll see what happens there. But it's a team on the rise, a team I think can win 7 games and get another bowl game and maybe ruffle some feathers in that Big 12, a couple upsets.
How do you pitch that? Baylor. We're not either of the other 5.
We don't have Dave Bliss here anymore.
meet the new Baylor,
The
not
new
the
Baylor.
same as the old Baylor.
Yes, and as you can,
And new Waco, too, not old Waco.
We don't have David Koresh anymore either.
and as Charlie, I'll give you credit for this. The SEC kind of steamrolling Baylor, as we show that now, the video of the bear
I forgot about
being
that.
steamrolled.
Look at that bear.
I give you all the credit
Got
for that.
steamrolled.
I got it from everydayshouldbesaturday.com. I didn't come up with it myself, but
Hey, coming up here next on the Sports Lounge, we'll talk about South Dakota State's exciting 29-28 victory over Southern Utah on Saturday, and we'll preview their matchup against Illinois this coming Saturday, coming up here on the Sports Lounge. Back here in the Sports Lounge, now we're getting ready to discuss South Dakota State. 29-28 victory over
And
Southern
look
Utah.
at this.
Game used, in fact. Game used.
Is that Moss's?
Could be.
I think it was the one Cool had on when he helped stop that 2-point conversion at the end.
Was it? Was it
I have
autographed?
No idea.
That'd be against NCAA rules.
This whole show's against NCAA rules. We have 7. They got up 7-0 Southern Utah, 9-7 at halftime. Good second quarter, good third quarter for South Dakota State. They almost gave it all back in that fourth quarter. How do you weigh the positives and the negatives here?
I would say 2.5 to 3 quarters of that game, SDSU looked like a really good football team, and by that I mean they had a running back who could make all the plays. Thank you. A running back who could make all the plays, ton of yards from scrimmage, a skilled receiving core with Trevor Tiefenthaler. Seth Daughters looked good before he went down. Brandon Hubert's a great slot guy. And a defense that was stifling, was getting to the quarterback. Sorensen was getting hurried all game long at 4 sacks in the first half. Was it
They
first
did
half?
in the first half, yeah.
4 sacks in the first half. I mean, that just sort of exemplifies how
Doug Pete.
Jake Steffen, these are guys that can get after the quarterback. And I think if they can maintain that, pressure on the quarterback, have O'Brien not sort of implode, I guess, have one of those games. And I think it's a team that has a shot to improve on last year. So I think for the most part, they looked like a better team.
For me, positives, negative. Biggest positive, they got the W. Always good to start out 1-0, especially when they've got to go to play Illinois soon. Defensively, obviously, you don't like it when you give up 21 straight points in a quarter. That's not good.
Never is.
Probably not good that it seemed like they got more pressure when they only rushed 4. It seemed like a lot of times when they blitzed, everyone picked it up and he had time to throw with guys open. I thought that was, I don't think that's probably going to be a recurring theme all year, maybe just a weird side thing of the game. But, I thought they looked cool, looked good, ran it well, other than his unfortunate fumble. Caught the ball well out of the backfield, probably what you would want from a receiver, converted to running back doing that. And, I think they look good going forward.
Yeah, everybody had kind of told me how good Tyrell Cool would be at running back, and I just kind of.
Oh, he's the best.
I just kind of said, well, we'll wait and see, and then he had a pretty good performance aside from the fumble that allowed Southern Utah to get back in the ball game.
And the upstart Zenner looked good too behind
Zach Zenner looked really good. Somebody that I personally have thought was pretty good.
I'm as high on Cool as you are on Zenner, I believe.
And I think they provide a pretty good 1-2 punch, provided Zenner stays in the number 2 spot. I think I was surprised at how well the passing game looked, and that was, with the exception of the interceptions, I thought they looked pretty good. And one thing I was ready to put down on paper was the 29 unanswered points that the Jackrabbits had until they, gave it all back at the end of the game. But I think there's a lot of pros and cons with that performance, but they won by 1 point, and they were probably 1 point better than Southern Utah.
And that secondary got some interceptions too off a really good quarterback. Winston Wright's interception at the time was a really big play in the game that I think a lot of people thought, iced it for good. And secondary was question mark going into this season, and they looked good. Sorensen got his yards at the end of the game during that when they kind of went in the no huddle and needed to get things going to get back in the game. But I think overall, its secondary looked okay too. One question I'm going to have though, again, I can't say that I'm sold on O'Brien yet because you saw some missed throws at the beginning of the game. You saw some timing routes that were off, and I thought, you guys. And
that may be the receiver or the quarterback, either way.
But it's like you guys have had 5-6 months to get this down and to fire on all cylinders, and I didn't expect to see that sort of disconnect. At least at the beginning of the game, they just looked off, but something clicked. I'm not sure what it was. Well, I think I do know. I think I do know what it was. Southern Utah can defend a swing pass to save their lives. Cool could get 10, 15 yards anytime he wanted, and maybe put that wide receiver screen pass in the back of the.
I think they ran it 3 or 4 times and it worked once.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You look at Illinois coming up here. Can they compete? Will they compete? Differences between the 3 previous BCS games.
They can compete. I think they will compete for a good majority of the game. You can never really know with these FBS FCS games. I mean, is Illinois more physical, stronger, faster than we think they are against SDSU? We don't know that. I think there's going to be a disparity up front with the offensive defensive lines. I think Illinois is going to have more strength and maybe have a pretty easy time of getting to O'Brien. But, we'll see if SDSU's front line holds up. If O'Brien doesn't throw it right at Illinois guys a couple times, they could go into the fourth quarter with a lead, and who knows what happens there.
Because Illinois did not dominate Arkansas State last week.
No, they didn't. And Illinois is not a team that's been the same since they made that, what bowl game was
Rose Bowl.
The Rose Bowl a few years ago.
That's when they signed the contract to play this game the season after that.
And since then, Illinois has kind of come back down to earth a little bit. It's certainly a possibility. I don't know where they were predicted in the Big Ten, but I think they have a shot, yeah.
3rd or 4th in that leaders division.
Okay.
I think they can compete. Hopefully they do. We'll see. The bright side is that, as well, we'll put it this way. Illinois does recruit well. I think in terms of FBS teams South Dakota State plays, they will be closer in terms to Nebraska than Iowa State or Minnesota. But the bright side is one of the knocks on Ron Zook is he does not and his staff doesn't seem to coach them very well once they're there. So they have these guys that are enormously talented, get drafted high in the NFL draft and become solid pros, but in college just never really reach the potential that they have. And hopefully that's something they can play off of, go out, hopefully the Jacks can go out and play smart. And, like Drew said, if you can be close in the fourth quarter, fingers crossed, hopefully you tie in the fourth quarter or a lead, then you just kind of see what happens in the last 15 minutes and keep your fingers crossed.
One aspect that I think is going to be really important if they are close in the fourth quarter is they're going to have to make field goals, make extra points, punt the ball well. The kicking game is going to have to be solid.
Yeah, you have to play a great game all around.
Yeah, and I think you talked about the offensive defensive line. I think the offensive line could have some success, at least pass blocking, because they have proved to be decent pass blocking players, mainly against FCS competition, but I think they'll do okay. Like you said, a lot of it will ride on Thomas O'Brien and his ability to protect the football. I think if they, like you said, if they protect the ball at all, they're going to be in the game.
Well, they did. They did for the most part at Nebraska last year, and more often than not, they were actually.
Yep, there you go.
There we go. I think more often than not, they were actually quicker off the snap than Nebraska was. I don't know what it was with that day, but it wasn't an issue, at least last year. Now it's a new year and a different game. Who knows what happens? But they've shown they're capable of doing that.
They have less margin for error in this game than they do in a usual game.
Well, yeah, I think that's clear. When you more quality opponent equals less, a less window to fumble a snap or to get a holding penalty on a big play or miss a field goal, things like that.
If you want to simplify it and say the Southern Utah game came down to that 2-point conversion, you can. And if you want to simplify it even more, the difference between SDSU making the playoffs and winning the conference last year and not was one play against Northern Iowa. So it just goes to show, maybe we look at the Southern Utah game at the end of the year and say this was the one play that got them the one win that they needed to get into the playoffs.
I think
Very
so
well
too.
could
Yeah.
be.
I was sitting there after they got that touchdown. They were going for two, and I'm sitting going, "This could be it, right? This is incredible to think it, but September 3rd, this could be it. This could be their season. Do you want to be 0-1 going into a 3-game road trip? Two of those games I think are really, really tough. But maybe it's different fortunes this year. I wonder if that happens last year.
It's kind of if they play that game last year, luck goes the other way, perhaps.
Possibly, yeah.
Does anybody want to step up and be the man? So the next week we can play the clip. It says you picked South Dakota State to defeat Illinois.
Is this the part where I take the jackrabbit head mask off?
If you want to.
There's a helmet right here if you want.
Or can I put the helmet on?
If you're picking them, anybody want to be as bold? Say
I will take the Jackrabbits over the
score.
Illini.
Score, yeah.
Score.
Let's go.
35-7.
We're gonna go 17-13.
Okay.
Wow.
Traxer, you will pass.
I will pass.
I think we can agree if South Dakota State is going to beat Illinois, it's
gonna be
probably
close.
going to be in a low-scoring game and not like a 41-38 shootout.
I'll pass on a prediction
Now I
altogether.
say that it'll
Okay.
probably be 50-48 now.
I don't see it. I don't see Cool having the game that he did last Saturday. I think they're going to game plan a lot against him, and those swing passes not going to be very effective. O'Brien's going to have to make some passes that he's maybe not entirely comfortable with. I don't know how. I think that defense can hold their own. I wonder what the offense is going to do.
We build these teams up. We build Minnesota up. We build Nebraska up. But they played like crap when they played against South Dakota State. So just because it's Illinois, don't expect they're going to come out. They say they're not going to overlook South Dakota State, but I think it's pretty clear that Nebraska
There's a good
did.
chance they will. And, obviously, hopefully they do. Hopefully they think they'll just show up and steamroll them, and then we'll see what actually happens on Saturday.
Like with that truck? With the truck?
Yeah.
Boom!
Hopefully they think they'll SEC the Baylor Bears when actually they will be going through the Jackrabbit Den of horror.
Wow. Who was building up the Gophers 2 years ago?
Well, I mean,
Because that
I know.
that 3-point win was probably as good as the Gophers could do in that game.
But you just say the word Minnesota, and they don't expect you to compete at all. Even, I think, on the 3 games they played, Iowa State played them the best and the toughest.
And the precedence of SSU against those teams wasn't really there. You had Iowa State, which they didn't play well against, but that was really it.
But they had chances in that first quarter against Iowa State
Yeah, they
many years ago.
Yeah, about
Actually,
three.
they had chances through a lot of the game.
did.
They did what they wanted to do for the most part. They just kept turning
They
the
did.
ball over.
They by all means should have won that Minnesota game, and
Yeah.
if 2 penalties are erased, they're right in the Nebraska
Yep.
game at the end.
Yes. Coming up here on the Sports Lounge, we will preview the National Football League. I believe you've heard of it. The league's been around for a while.
Is it back yet?
It's quite popular. I don't think it went anywhere.
No.
So it's regular schedule programming, that stuff.
What?
It's on
It's on a clock.
it's on the clock.
Oh,
It's going to
okay.
start when it's supposed to. Coming up here on the Sports Lounge.
Is that rugby?
Yes. Back here in the Sports Lounge, now we get to preview the National Football League, everybody's favorite thing in the world. In the NFC, we'll start Packers, defending champions. Had a lot of people hurt. They're all back now. And the Eagles won the offseason Super Bowl. So do we like either of these two teams or none of them?
Well, convenient that we're talking about this now, right before kickoff of the.
Oh, yeah, by the way,
game. Whoa.
if you're watching this at 6 o'clock, the original airing, the game will be on at 7. Obama be damned. We're on right now.
You
At
got
6.
it. We're better than Obama, I guess.
Well, poll ratings we might be. I mean, who knows?
We'll see. Approval rating was probably higher.
I saw one YouTube clip did get a like.
We have a like.
I don't know
We
who
got a
did
like.
it. Maybe it was one of these people.
How many
I'm not
likes
sure.
on our Facebook page? Do we have that? And if
We
so,
don't have one. It's the Sports Block. We got
That's
96.
under construction.
We gotta
Under
get
100,
we gotta
yeah.
get that Twitter and Facebook stuff going. Anyway, I like the Packers a lot. Can anybody disagree with chalking them up for 12 wins? Right in
Yeah,
the spot?
they won 10 last year.
I think it's with Aaron Rodgers and that he has such an ability to manage the game, and when you're so good at that as a quarterback, it puts your team in such an easy spot.
So you're saying quarterback's important to win.
Yeah.
Is that a
something,
new
something about a
idea?
quarterback-driven
That's a new
league?
idea.
I keep hearing
Interesting.
about.
Just
Interesting.
some kind of rating for quarterbacks so you can look at
should.
it statistically.
Quarterback-driven league, a purpose-driven
Interesting.
life. This is all in the same mold. But Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, I think you can chalk him up for 12.
All in the same mold, but not Eric Molds.
No,
Okay.
different mold.
Okay.
Oh. Well, I can't follow up the Eric Molds comment. I was thinking about NFC teams, and you can count the Eagles out for the Super Bowl right now. They're not going to win it.
Okay, tell me why.
They're not going to win it, or they're not going to go to it.
Both.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
Well, if you're not
Oh, bro, you're going there
He
again.
dropped it.
if you're not going to go to the Super Bowl, you're not going to win.
Win
so I
it.
don't know why you'd say
Right.
both. but
Okay.
tell
Well,
me why they're
first he
not gonna
said
make
they're
the
not
Super
going to do it, and they're not going to win. I was just clarifying to see.
Bowl. Okay.
I just think there's a lot of hype here. There's, I think,
Miami
a lot
has
proven.
hype. And they got to the
I hate to go back to the Vikings last year, but the Vikings exposed the Eagles last year with blitzing the living daylights out of Michael Vick. And then it turned out that they didn't really recover or handle blitzes very well then for the rest of the season. I have my worries about LaShawn McCoy, even though he's a decent running back. Can he carry the team like he needs to? And then there's a lot of I don't think this will be a big issue for them, but I kind of want to see how they juggle the three good cornerbacks.
To that point on the Eagles, the hype's justified, I think. However, I have a question mark. It's Mike Vick. Here's a guy who played 12 games last year.
He won't start every game this year.
Is he a guy who's going to be out there for 16? And if he's missed 4 or 5 games, can you scrape together a couple wins with your backup quarterback?
so.
Vince Young?
Well, what do you?
Say what you will. He's a winner.
Yeah,
Say what about
Say what
Vince
you
Young?
will. I mean, those are indisputable. Charlie Hildebrand,
it's true.
argue for the defense here.
Well, this is my thing, is as Travis knows, but you two and all the viewers probably don't, is before the lockout ended, before free agency started in the office, we had to go through and make all these NFL picks. And me, I thought, you know what, I'm going to put down that the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl. And then they went through and then they did all this great offseason stuff. People anointed them the team of destiny, and I basically said, well, that solidifies that they will not win the Super Bowl now, and I have picked it wrong. I think they'll still be in the playoffs. They'll have a shot to make the Super Bowl.
But you know who anointed themselves as this team of destiny?
Themselves.
The dream team? Vince Young. Backup quarterback says we're the dream team.
You won a Rose Bowl.
When
think it's
does the
something-
sixth man off the bench ever say, yeah, we're going to the NBA Finals?
Well, it's something where the media runs with it. He said dream team. Everybody's thinking it.
They said it,
I know.
and I'm going to I'm going to hold.
You're going to
Vince
pound
to
it. You're going to pound it
Pound
hard.
into the ground.
I don't know if you can hold Vince Young accountable to anything.
You're right. You're definitely right. You can't.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't think the quarterback slot at the Eagles is by all means
Rock solid.
going to lead them to the promised land. If Mike Vick misses games, who knows? Vince Young keeps getting hurt too with his hamstring. I mean, who knows what's going to happen there? Also, if they're not going to get a pass rush, I don't care if you have Asamoah. I don't care if you have, Deion Sanders circa 92. I mean, you're going to get passed on. It's a good team though. I would say they by all means probably have a great shot of having that bye week first round playoffs.
You mentioned
but they have
Vic.
holes too.
You mentioned Vic and his injuries. You mentioned Vince Young and his injuries. Ty Detmer's not walking through that door, gentlemen. That's
true.
Okay? Okay.
This is one thing I see with the Eagles is they're so on offense. They're so fast and try to play at such a high octane. The Eagles remind me, and this I'm not a huge car guy, so this might be a very poor analogy that backfires, but they kind of remind me of like a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, where when it's running correctly, it can be great and almost impossible to stop. But there's always, you get little tiny problems and things with it, and things don't quite work right, and it can't operate at a high efficiency for very long, for very often. And I think that's a problem they could run into. They've got a bunch of guys, skill-wise, offensively, very quick but undersized guys that are one, little elbow in the pile from being out for 3 weeks.
What kind of gas mileage does Ferrari get? Is it good?
I think it's
Not
bad,
good.
but
That's
I
the
don't
tie
know.
into the Eagles analogy too. Can they hold on to that great high octane stuff for 19 weeks?
Or
can
the
they
fact
can they
that-
run at 200 miles an hour for
Or
19
the
weeks?
fact that Ferraris are probably expensive to fix. So if somebody gets hurt on the Eagles, probably going to be a cost to that.
None of this planned. All off the top of
That
my
is
head.
off
Bill.
the top.
Well, they might run out of gas.
Looking at the AFC, seems like every year a lot of the same suspects in the AFC. Your Colts, a bit iffy. Everybody loves the Chargers every year and they disappoint. New England, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Jets. Anybody like any of those teams? Or a different one?
Defensively, I really like the Jets as long as Rex Ryan's there. I don't know if they're going to go back to the AFC title game. And, as a Dolphins fan, that pains me to say that. And even more so, I'm sure the Patriots will be good again this year. That is even more painful to say. I don't know if they'll go 14-2 again, but I'd be shocked if they win less than 12 games.
Well, we talked about one unproven current USC quarterback earlier. We'll go with another one right now in Mark Sanchez, who, he's gotten them to the AFC Championship game now 2 years.
Their defense has got
Right. Well, regardless,
But
he
yeah.
was the quarterback of the
He
team.
hasn't hurt them.
He hasn't hurt them. He hasn't won them when it counts, I guess. Because like we talked about with Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or Drew Brees, it is a quarterback league. And I think, the Jets, I root for the Jets every time to get it done, but they just can't find a way to do it. It doesn't seem.
Well, what we should consider the fact that in 2009, Jets went, I think, 9-7,
Yep.
crept in, won a couple games in the playoffs. Last year, 10-6, that big win at New England. But does that win really matter if you're not going to go all the way with it? New York has holes, and most specifically, they have holes at quarterback. Sanchez will look good, have a QB rating of 95 1 week. Next week, he throws 3-4 picks. This is the third year. Does he put it all together? We don't know that yet, and it's still a question mark. If he puts it all together, the Jets are 13-3 and have a week rest before they play at home in the playoffs.
He should be good. They're built for him to be as successful as he could be. They've got arguably the best offensive line in the NFL. I mean, they're rolling out I used to be good LaDainian Tomlinson that all of a sudden looks very good again out of nowhere. And they've obviously got a phenomenal defense. So the pieces are in place for him to take the next step and be good, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not rooting against him at all, but I don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah, a lot to be said, and for them declaring, or Rex Ryan declaring every year that they're going to win the Super Bowl, they put a lot of expectations on themselves. Never mind the fact that they play in New York, which adds a whole lot more to it too.
Every season for the past 6-7 years, there's been, I think, at least 5 teams to make the playoffs after missing it the previous year. Does that trend continue this year?
I think it doesn't. Not to the point where there's 5 teams. I look at the AFC, NFC, and I think it just seems to me like it's pretty clear who's going to be in it and who's going to fall short. It seems different than in previous years. Now, the past few years there's been this great parity, and Carolina can win 2 wins and win 10 wins this year, and they get in the playoffs. I don't think it's going to happen with the team this year. I think it's clear to me that the Panthers are not very good, the Seahawks are not very good, the Browns are not very good. These teams are going to lose a lot of games.
The Seahawks, the same team that won the NFC West last year?
Yeah, and they could very well make the playoffs again this year at 6-10. I mean, we don't know, but I think it's very clear who the bad teams are. I think it's very clear who the very good teams are that could be playing deep into January. To me, this year anyway.
I don't think that parity will be gone. I think it will be decreased to a degree, like you said, because there are a clear group of good teams. But I think there'll be a couple teams that had 5 wins last year who will make the playoffs.
Yeah, I heard once that you don't ever want to mess with the streak. So, I mean, until it's broken, I mean, I guess I'm going to say it's probably going to keep happening because what you mentioned from the AFC, that, the Chargers, the Steelers, the Patriots, the Jets, and the Colts, and of those
Ravens.
5, one of them almost for sure won't make the playoffs just because that's the way it's been the last few years, and there's a good chance another won't. And all it takes New England didn't make now they did go 11-5, but they didn't make the playoffs the year Tom Brady got hurt, and I don't know if they have another Matt Castle in the backup.
Ryan Mallett. Let him go.
He's there. I don't know if he can lead them to 11 wins. And a lot of these teams are one unfortunate injury away from only winning 8 or 9 games then and missing out on the playoffs.
Well, to the Patriot point, nobody ever thought that Tom Brady would step in for Drew Bledsoe and take him to the Super Bowl.
It's true.
Or the guy that, do you know his name from Minnesota that stepped in for Gray against USC?
Max Shortell.
Look at him go, Matt
Look at him
Shurtell.
go.
Getting a.
But now there's a
Getting some
quarterback
dap.
controversy.
Well,
I don't want that.
no, it's not a Notre Dame situation here.
It's not.
Super Bowl picks, MVP, and 2 teams that make the playoffs that didn't last year. I'll go Falcons-Ravens, MVP Aaron Rodgers. Vikings make the playoffs. Cowboys make the playoffs. We'll come back to this.
Again here? We should come back. We're going to come back to this.
No,
or-
Super Bowl,
Super Bowl.
MVP. 2 teams that did not make the playoffs last year that will
Okay,
this year.
I think I can do this. We'll go the Ravens in the Super Bowl
Okay.
against the Chicago Bears. I don't have much confidence in that. No, I'm changing my mind.
Change
I don't want
that
the Bears.
quick.
We'll go to the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys
Really?
are more likely to have a bounce back year and
Okay.
make the Super Bowl. This is all off the top of my head. I wasn't prepared for this.
No.
No,
The 2
Neither
teams
was I.
in the playoffs that weren't last year. I'm
Obviously
gonna
the
go
Cowboys.
The Cowboys
They're winning the whole thing.
and the Miami Dolphins. And
Oof.
for the MVP, they went 7-9 and had a top 10 defense last year. As long as, the difference between 4-12 and 12-4 is about that much. They probably won't either, though.
They will do
and
better
for
than
the
Buffalo.
MVP, yeah, they'll do better than Buffalo. And for MVP, I'll go with Aaron Rodgers, I guess. I don't know.
I'm going to go MVP Aaron Rodgers. Super Bowl, I'm going to go Patriots.
Tampa Bay.
I'm not going to go with Tampa Bay. I'm going to go Patriots. Green Bay. I think Green Bay can get back to the Super Bowl.
It's probably a lot better than my pick.
New teams, AFC. I think San Diego creeps back in. I think you're going to see a similar set in the playoffs in the AFC this year. However, I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers creep into
Okay.
the wild card spot.
Okay.
Since this whole thing is off the whim,
Off the cuff.
my picks will be off the whim as well. I have the Detroit Lions versus the San Diego Chargers in the Super Bowl.
Nice.
What do you
I
think of-
like it.
What do you think of that?
I
huh?
like it, Traxler.
Because
Traxler.
we're just going off. We're just firing from the hip. I'll fire from the hip. Lions, Chargers.
We need 2 teams that weren't in the playoffs last year. and
teams
MVP.
that
Those would be 2 of them. Those were the 2.
Okay, we need an MVP then. That's true.
Both count.
I'll bet you $1,000 right now Detroit does not make it to the Super Bowl.
Last time the Lions won a playoff game.
We'll talk about 1950 some.
Something like
If
that.
we
I believe they
58?
won in the 90s once.
I think they might have won one
No,
with
they
Barry
were in
Sanders.
there.
They won the 57 championship, 58 championship.
Something like that.
What a year that was.
Yeah,
God, they were good.
greatness.
Since the Chargers would be making the Super Bowl, then it'll be Philip Rivers
Okay.
MVP.
We will come back to this, and we will have some fun.
I
And
On
coming,
tapes, we think.
I hope to hell it is. Coming up next, we'll give you something to look forward to this weekend. You are watching the Sports Lounge. back here in the Sports Lounge, wrap this college football and NFL edition up.
SDSU.
SDSU.
SDSU does play college football, right?
I think they do.
I'll let Stig see what he says.
Does FCS count?
Yeah.
It does.
Something to look forward to this weekend. Besides the football. Or maybe it is the football.
How about some high school football? South Dakota High School
How's
football.
Freeman looking?
My alma mater, I don't think they're looking too good. I don't know how they've done the first couple weeks, but it's been a struggle for them the past 4 years. But
Ever since you left, it's been downhill.
it has been, ever since third string quarterback gone. No, I never played football. May high school football, NFL Sunday. I'm just going to go with that. Not original at all, but fully prepared for a 9 to 10 hour day in front of a television.
Good for you.
Thank you.
More football. I think obviously the NFL is a good one. We'll go first time ever in college. If anyone wants to put on their elitist shirts, they can watch Notre Dame and Michigan play in Michigan. The first night game ever.
That'll
After
be pretty
180 million years, they finally said, you know what? We have 110,000 people. How about we put lights in so we can play at night now?
Boom.
But in like 35 years after Wrigley Field.
Welcome to
did it, too.
1950. We will be sending you to the Nebraska-Fresno State game, will we not?
That's true.
Your
Correspondence from there.
Your parents will be fitting the bill for the show,
That's also true.
but we'll just say that you're going for us.
Okay.
To scout. We're going to do some scouting here.
Some
Big
scouting
time.
for Nebraska when the South Dakota State plays them next year.
Yeah,
Great.
a few years from now.
Well, how about some SDSU soccer? They're home. What do we?
At Fishback.
I was going to mention
They're at Fishback. They're home.
Friday.
Friday and
Wisconsin,
Sunday.
Green Bay Friday, UND on Sunday, and I'll sprinkle in the Jacks Illini Saturday morning. with
Where
my
will you
Fruit
be
Loops.
watching the game?
I'll be watching from my room. I have Big Ten Network.
Look at you.
Nice.
Very nice.
I'll be watching from my parents' house.
I have to
on
set-
the
I-
Big Ten
I have to
Network
s-
until we leave.
What time is the
I have to
Nebraska?
set my
7.
alarm. I have to set my alarm to watch this
You aren't going to be up by
SSU
11
game.
a.m.?
Where are you gonna
I have
go?
to make sure that I'm up for then. We'll see. Those Friday nights are usually an adventure.
You don't know where you're gonna be? Do you have
Friday?
No, Saturday morning.
Either
at
where you're gonna
11
be
a.m.
Friday night.
Where are you watching the game?
My house.
it? You have it?
I got Big Ten.
Okay, all right.
I may have to go to Cubbies.
All right, we'll see. Maybe the sports lounge will wrangle something up.
Maybe we should.
Be determined.
What do you want to do?
We'll talk about it.
We'll talk about
Let's
it.
talk about what we want to do right
We'll
here.
talk about it, and then we'll let you know,
let you know.
what the hell
Through
we
the
decided
Facebooks.
last week.
Come join
We'll
us.
be back in half an hour, but due to TV magic, it'll be about 30 seconds.
Yes.
Come eat some waffle fries with us. Have a grain belt, have a whatever.
Punch the
It'll be a
machine.
It'll
Punch
be
the
a
Big
rip
Ten.
roaring time.
Do the punching. As always, you can see the times on the bottom, 6 and 9, and we have South Dakota State football on Monday nights, so we bookend that at 6 and 10.
Beautiful.
Next week, we will preview South Dakota State at Cal Poly and look at the upset that they had against Illinois. And look back at week 1 here of the NFL season. You have been watching the Sports Lounge.
Troops, and the crowd did their job.
Inexperienced offensive line, loud crowd, new quarterback.
False start. Offense. Everyone but the center. 5-yard penalty. Third down.
That's a classic. Randy Crystal, the referee, full start. Everybody but the center. All you guys.
That's almost as good as he's got the quarterback down, giving him the business.
That is a classic.